Hello, everybody. Happy Friday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but first, we just hit 3,110 subscribers to the YouTube channel. Shout out to all the subscribers, and special tip of the cap goes to the channel members, especially elite channel members Brendon, Mikel, Hasher for MVP, VGK Tiger 75, Ryguy, Salacious, Crumb, Brendan Nelson's Haircut, It's Hoof, The Reno, and TVO. All right, it is that time of year, guys, April 2nd, and we are going to dive into the NFL draft. And we're going to do it bigger and better than we ever have before. We're going to spend a lot of time dissecting all the players that I'm interested in. And by the end, hopefully, we have some idea of who the Seahawks are ultimately going to target. So we're going to go by position. And we're going to prioritize certain positions above others using the priority list that I created yesterday. So, we're going to start with wide receivers because that was the first position of big need that I identified yesterday, the first high priority need. And we're going to be spending 3 days covering the various wide receivers in this draft who I like. So, before we dive into the players that I have targeted, let's go ahead and take a look at the kind of player that I think we may be looking for in terms of a wide receiver, because it's not enough to just be a wide receiver. You need to be the right kind of wide receiver for this team. So, let's start with the guys who I project will be taken in the bottom part of the second round or the third round. So basically somebody who we'd have to use our first pick on, either pick at 56 or trade down a little bit and get him a little later. So we're going to start there. But first, let's take a look at the wide receiver position as Shane Waldron might be seeing it. During Shane Waldron's LA Rams stint, his wide receivers were consistently characterized by two traits as I see it. Number one, and probably the most important thing, would be elite yards after catch skills. Last year, the Rams had two wide receivers who were in the top 10 in yards after the catch. Cooper Kupp, who had over 520, which was fifth, and he had 5.7 yards after the catch per reception. Robert Woods had almost 500 yards after the catch, which was ninth, and 5.5 yards after the catch per reception. And these yards after the catch per reception numbers are among the top 10 in the NFL as well. So very, very strong yard after the catch per reception numbers for both players. 2019, same deal. Robert Woods, 576 yards after the catch, which was seventh, 6.4, which was one of the highest marks in the NFL, and Cooper Kupp was 11th, 538 yards after the catch, 5.7 yards after catch per reception. So I think that's the most important trait that Shane Waldron values when it comes to wide receivers. The second trait would be good height and size. In 2020, the Rams had four receivers catch a pass for them, four wide receivers. All of them were at least 6 feet tall. All of them were at least 195 pounds. So I think he likes receivers to have a little bit of size. So it follows that any receiver the Seahawks take in the draft must have one of the two above traits, preferably both, in order to fit into the new offense. Now, I understand the fact that we just extended Tyler Lockett kind of throws that into question, maybe. But I feel like if Waldron would be willing to accept one receiver that goes against his ideal skill set, he probably wouldn't be willing to accept two. So finding guys that fit his mold are extra important as we try to scout out this draft. One skill that I would place maybe as a tertiary consideration would be jet sweep skills, because the Rams like to run a lot of jet sweeps with Shane Waldron and Sean McVay over the last couple years. So he probably wants receivers who can run a jet sweep effectively. Something to keep in mind. So we're going to take a look at guys who are going to go in the first 3 rounds, second to third in all likelihood. And there are 4 guys that we're going to talk about today. 4 guys that I targeted. So let's jump right in. The first receiver we're going to be taking a look at here is Amman St Brown of the USC Trojans. He was the first guy who caught my eye as I was scouting out receivers. Amman St Brown of the USC Trojans. So, here's what I got for you. He's 21 years old from USC, as I said. 6'1", 195 pounds, and you can bet that when he joins the NFL, he's going to gain a little muscle weight. So, he's got the right size to fit in the Shane Waldron offense, more or less. His stats, he's got a 3-year college football career, 2018 as a freshman, 60 catches, 750 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had 2 rushing attempts for 9 yards. 2019, breakout year, 77 catches, 1,042 yards, 6 touchdowns. And check this out. This is actually interesting. 7 attempts, 60 yards, 1 touchdown. So they really like to use him on end arounds once every couple games. And then in 2020, he didn't play that many games because he was a Pac-12 player, and we all know how Pac-12 players fared in the COVID year. But when he did play, he played very well. He had 41 receptions, 478 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So still got it done. All right, his approximate draft value as I see it would be, okay. What I did was I took the big board position of Amon St Brown on 7 different major draft prognosticating websites. And from this, we can get some idea of where he is expected to get drafted. So the Draft Network, Pro Football Network, and Sporting News all think he's going to go in the second half of the second round, bottom half of the second round. Tankathon and Pro Football Focus view him as a 3rd rounder, maybe even a top 4th rounder. Walter Football thinks he's going to go anywhere from the 3rd to the 5th round, and oddly enough, ESPN doesn't even list him. So I guess they think he's not even going to get drafted, which is not going to happen. So there's a pretty wide range here, but it seems to me that most of the reputable sources think that Amon St Brown will be a low 2nd to high 3rd round pick. All right. So let's talk about his game, because I've watched a little bit of tape on him. I've watched what he does, what he's good at, and there's a lot of stuff to like. So let's take a look at the notes that I made as I watched him play. He typically plays out of the slot, which could be good because I feel like Lockett's skill set may not lend itself well to Shane Waldron's offense from the slot, so we need a slot. He's versatile enough to fit into any role and any type of offense, which is definitely good for us, because when I watched him play, that was one thing that stuck out to me. He kind of could do everything. He could get yards after the catch. He could go deep. He could take it vertically. He could be a possession receiver. He was a red zone threat. He really could do it all in college. And while some of those skills won't translate to the NFL, I was encouraged by what I saw from him at USC. He was very versatile and showed a lot of different ability. So next, we have very good athlete, route runner, and toughness. I saw him win a lot of 50-50 balls, a lot of contested catches, a lot of difficult catches. He would go up and get the ball. He seems to be a polished route runner. I saw a lot of things that I like. He has good hands, which allow for him to be an efficient receiver. That's obviously a good sign that he'll be able to contribute a lot as a rookie. He's got some potential on wide receiver jet sweeps, as I already covered. I think that is something that Waldron may look at, and that could be a tiebreaker for him. That could convince him to go after a player like Amon St Brown over somebody else, just because he ran a lot of jet sweeps in college. Some downsides for Amon St Brown would be his top end speed is not great, lackluster speed, some focus and concentration issues, but you would think that as you mature as a human being, that would kind of get worked out of your game a little bit. So I'm not too worried about that, but he did have some focus issues in college, and he's not a good blocker, which kind of sucks for the Shane Waldron offense, but maybe it's something you can teach him to do with time. So yeah, that's Amon St Brown, the first receiver that I would really be excited to target in 2021, 2nd round to 3rd round. I like this kid. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he performed really well. I think he would be a good fit for what Waldron likes to do for the most part. And yeah, that's number 1. So number 2, next guy we're going to take a look at here, Diami Brown of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Receiver number 2, Diami Brown. So let's take a look here. He's 6'1", 195 pounds, exactly the same as Amon Ra. So size checks out. Let's take a look at his stats. In 2018, was a part-time player, 17 catches for 173 yards and a touchdown. And then he broke out the last 2 years. 51 catches in 2019, 1,034 yards, 12 touchdowns, 1 rush attempt for 2 yards. And then in 2020, kept on going. 55 catches, 1,100 yards almost, and 8 touchdowns. So 2 monster years, massive yards per reception. If you look at this, he almost had 20 yards per catch, which is really, really good. And watching him play, he did this despite not being a purely vertical threat. He was somebody who would run all kinds of routes and catch a lot of passes for short gains and turn them into bigger gains with his ability to make guys miss, which we'll get into in a moment. So, as for his draft value, the Draft Network thinks he's going to be, the Draft Network and Pro Football Focus both think he's going to be a middle second round pick. Tankathon has him near the bottom part of the third round. Walter Football has him going from anywhere from the second to the fourth round. Pro Football Network has him as a low third to a high fourth round pick. Sporting News has him as a high fourth round pick, and ESPN has him completely unlisted, which has to be a mistake because this guy is clearly a top 150 prospect at the worst. So, Diami Brown, I really liked his tape. Again, very versatile. I saw him doing a lot of different things as a receiver, and I was really impressed with his ability to run after the catch. And like I said, that's very valuable for us. So, let's take a look at the notes I made when I watched him play. He's an excellent vertical threat. He made a lot of big plays down the field. I saw a lot of long touchdowns, a lot of long passes. And look, whatever Waldron's going to do with the offense, Wilson has a great deep ball, and we should continue to utilize it. And Diami Brown looks like a player who could utilize that deep ball very well. Utilizes his deep speed to break off routes and be deadly into the intermediate areas. So, boom, right then and there, you've got a player who fits in great with what Wilson does and great with what Waldron will probably want to implement. Very good over the middle of the field and running with the ball, and that latter part is of special importance to us. He's very good running with the ball. I saw him make a lot of guys miss. I saw him break tackles. I saw him make extra yards after contact. I saw a lot of really cool stuff from him in that regard. He's a good blocker, which, as we've already established, is valuable. He's going to need to add some muscle to get off NFL press coverage, but all college to NFL players need to add some muscle, so I'm not worried about that. Needs to add some more routes to his tree to become a top wide receiver. I would expect a lot of college players to need to add some intricacies to their route tree, so I'm not concerned about that. That's something I think he will pick up, but this is a guy who I see being a big-time contributor as a rookie possibly, so I really like Diami Brown. He might be my favorite receiver in this draft that I've looked at so far who the Seahawks could actually get. Okay, prospect number 3, Nico Collins from Michigan, and this guy is not necessarily what we're looking for, but his potential is so high, I cannot help myself. He's 22 years old, like I said, a Michigan Wolverine. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. And when I say that, he should already be reminding you of somebody. But his stats, he barely did anything in 2017. 2018, he had 38 catches for 632 yards and 6 touchdowns. 2019, he had 37 catches, 729 yards, 7 touchdowns, sat out 2020 because of COVID. And those stats are not very good, are they? They're not. So why is he such a hot prospect and why do I want him? Let's get into it. First, let's talk about his draft value. ESPN has him as a mid-second round pick. The Draft Network has him as a low second round pick. PFN has him as a low third round pick. Sporting News has him as a high fourth round pick. Walter Football has him going anywhere from the third to the fifth round. Pro Football Focus has him as a fifth round pick. And Tankathon doesn't even have him listed, although Tankathon only goes 100 players deep, so that's not shocking. Nico Collins is quite simply the DK Metcalf of this draft, I think. More than anybody else, he's the DK Metcalf. And I know we already have a DK Metcalf, but is anybody going to be mad if we get another DK Metcalf? I don't think so. All right, so here are the notes that I made when I watched him play. He's a big play threat with tremendous vertical skills. So he's big and he's fast. He can go deep and go get the ball. So, reminds you of DK Metcalf. Like I said, sat out in 2020 because of COVID. He was poorly utilized in college thanks to bad Michigan QB play. Does he, again, remind you of anybody? You know, DK Metcalf played with A.J. Brown in college, and the team that he was on did not know how to utilize those guys. Embarrassing. So similar thing might be happening here. He's physical with good hands, so he's not soft. He's not a big guy who's soft. He does know how to use his size and his hands. and he's going to have a big advantage over any opposing defensive back, just like Metcalf does. So, look, if you get him, it might be a little redundant, but can you imagine an offense with 2 DK Metcalfs? That's pretty terrifying. So, I can't help myself. We got to at least talk about this guy. He is raw and inexperienced, reminiscent of DK Metcalf 2 years ago, like I said, and his route running needs work, reminiscent of, you guessed it, DK Metcalf. But guys, if we get Nico Collins and he works out, defensive backs are going to want to forfeit games against us in the future. I mean, Nico and DK, that's not fair. That's really not fair if Nico works out. All right, final guy we're going to take a look at today, the final guy who I could see the Seahawks targeting who's going to go in the 2nd or 3rd round is Sage Surratt of Wake Forest. And the Seahawks have not had good luck taking players from Wake Forest recently. Famous all-time draft bust Aaron Curry came from Wake Forest, but let's talk about this guy. He's interesting. And I'm not sure if he's a great fit for what we need in terms of what Shane Waldron's looking for, but one thing I really got from Sage Surratt when I scouted him a little bit, his high IQ, high football IQ, is going to allow him to maximize whatever his somewhat limited talent is going to make it possible for him to do. He's 23 years old, which is a little older than you like. Like I said, Wake Forest. He's 6'3" and 215 pounds, so he's pretty big. He's pretty big, but unlike Nico Collins, he's more of a possession receiver. And that's kind of the problem to me. He's more possession and less yards after the catch. He's somebody who will convert the big 3rd down, but he's not going to turn around and turn that 8-yard catch into a 20-yard catch by making people miss and breaking tackles all the time. I saw a little bit of yard after the catch skill from him when I watched him, but not a lot. But anyway, 2018, his stats, 41 catches, 581 yards, 4 touchdowns. Breakout year in 2019, 66 catches, 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Very nice stats on a not great Wake Forest team. He sat out 2020 because of COVID. And there's a wide range of takes on where he might go in the draft. ESPN thinks he's going to be a 2nd-round pick, or high 3rd, I guess. Walter Football projects him going from anywhere to the 2nd or the 3rd. Sporting News says he's going to be a late 3rd rounder. The Draft Network thinks he's going to be a late 4th rounder. And Pro Football Focus and Pro Football Network have him as a 5th rounder. So I feel like he's probably going to be a 3rd-round pick, basically. He's very odd in that he's not a great athlete. He's not going to burn people. He's not going to out-jump people. He's not going to jump 50 feet in the air and bring down these crazy one-handed catches through triple coverage. He's physically limited, but he knows how to find spaces, and he knows how to bring down big catches. So here's what I got. He's a physical receiver with fantastic ball skills, very intelligent and high football IQ, frequently wins in contested catch situations. So I can definitely see him being a guy who becomes a safety valve for Wilson, somebody who runs these little 5 to 7 yard routes to keep the chains moving on drives to help convert these 3rd and medium type situations or turn 2nd and long into 3rd and manageable. He should be very good underneath and in the red zone, like I kind of alluded to just now. He's not a great athlete. He's actually a very forgettable athlete. His speed, not very good. His quickness, not very good. Kind of got a low ceiling. I don't think he's ever going to be a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro, but I do think he's going to be pretty good. And he has a lot of potential to potentially be there in the 4th round or even the 5th round. So I would definitely consider waiting on him and seeing if he's going to be there at your 2nd pick, but I feel like he's going to be a 3rd rounder. So interesting player, Sage Surratt. He's the last guy we're going to take a look at today. I don't know if he's a great fit for Waldron, but I can see him fitting in as a possession receiver who just helps you move the chains and doesn't do anything too special once he gets the ball in his hands, but he can get the ball in his hands reliably. And that's going to do it for this draft. This part of my draft scouting. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow, we're going to start looking at the later round draft talents, guys who you could get in the later rounds. And there are quite a few guys in this draft who I would still be very interested in, but these are my top guys. If we use our second or third round pick on a receiver, I want it to be one of these four. Peace out.